talk to Gage.
Alright, so with this video, this marks the end of the Xenoblade saga. So today we're going to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let me just say at the outset, I overall really do like this game. Let me just make that clear up at the front. I definitely have a lot more extended opinions and hot takes maybe throughout this video, but I do like the game. This is probably the best Xenoblade Chronicles game out of the trilogy, but again, we're gonna get into some of this. So the first thing I wanted to say is that the graphics are really incredible for the Switch. Now, obviously, it's not incredible graphics wise if you were to compare it to other games on other consoles that just look better, but as far as this being a Switch exclusive, it looks really cool and amazing, and I'm actually quite impressed with it. Sure, it looks kind of blurry at times whenever you're running throughout the world, especially if the camera zoomed out. But overall, I was definitely impressed with the presentation. Let me also say the music is absolutely amazing. Really, all three of these games have had amazing music up to this point, so it's nothing really new. This could be the best one, possibly. This might be the best soundtrack in the series. I'm not really too sure though, because I have a soft spot for the original, but let me just say, it is very good. You all know, usually whenever I make these videos, there's two things that I am always most interested in talking about when it comes to games. It is the gameplay, so how does it play, what's the design philosophy, and then what is the story, what are the themes, what is the tone, what is it saying, you know? So these are the two big halves that I always like to talk about in my videos most often. So we're gonna start out talking about the gameplay. So it is better than Xenoblade Chronicles 2, that's for sure. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I made a whole video on it. You can go and watch that if you want, but in a lot of ways, it's just a vast improvement from XC2. This is probably the best combat in the series also, but I will argue that it has the potential of maybe being the most repetitive in the series at the same time. So yes, it is the best one, but there's a few things I think if you play it long enough, you're gonna start getting a little bored of certain aspects of the combat, because in this game, they really built up the, you know, flashy animations and battle animations and things like that. And this is pretty cool, admittedly, when you're playing through it the first, you know, several tens of hours. You know, it's nice, it's cool, it looks really good. It kind of reminds me of when you do a chain attack in this game, it reminds me of the all-out attack from Persona 5. Not as stylish, but similar vibe, pretty cool. But you will soon realize that the animations are always the same, and you end up seeing them a lot, and especially the more difficult battles in the game that take a while. You're gonna go through the all-out attack, if you will. You're gonna go through the chain attack a few good times, and if you end up going with the same setups, which sometimes you have no choice, it's gonna be very similar stuff. So again, I think it is the best combat in the series. They brought back both the auto recharge arts and then the arts that recharge when you auto attack. I thought that was pretty smart. That was a genius idea, and it was a nice callback to both of the first two games and how they worked as far as their combat. And when you balance both of them, because you can have arts from each side, it was really good. I like that. I really like that part of it, because it was like, you know, you can auto attack and build up certain arts, and then other ones you just have to like wait a certain amount of time. I was definitely a fan of that. Let me point out something I was not a huge fan of, and that is how the game insists on auto equipping your characters every single time you change their class. So when I first started out the game, I was excited because I was like, dude, like, you know, you get to like really, you know, have all this character customization, build out your classes how you want, and that stuff is cool, but it was a little underwhelming and kind of annoying how I basically had no say over it. Like, yeah, I could go in and like, you know, select everything for myself, but if I didn't want to change my loadout for my character, like, you know, my arts or like my bonus arts or equipment or gems, if I didn't want to swap any of those out, and I'm just like, all right, I just want to like swap a class, or if you accidentally swapped a class out, the game will literally auto equip your character. So I just basically was like, fine, like I equipped Noah and Mio most of the time, because those are the two characters I played the most. And I basically just auto-equipped everybody else, and I just assigned the classes that I needed them to fill. And so like, that's not what I personally would have liked, but I can admit that your time in the menus would exponentially be higher and pretty slow and boring if you always had to customize every single character and every single little aspect of them. So I'm a little torn on it. I think the option's nice to have, though I wish we could turn it off. I wish we could turn off the auto-equipping and we could just do it ourselves. Going back to the balance and combat of this game, it is probably the most balanced / easiest combat in a Xenoblade Chronicles game. So I played this game on normal. It had 3 difficulties this time instead of 2 like the previous 2 games, and I thought it was perfectly fine. As long as you take part in some of the side content, it ends up being fairly balanced by the end of it. So I was impressed. In my experience, the Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, if you play on their normal difficulties, are a little too difficult and too grindy in my opinion. It's just less balanced in that way. It's really trying to push you to do side content, and if you don't really care to do the side content in those games, and I didn't always want to, then it's better. It's just better. This balancing is the way it is, I think. Another thing I liked about the combat is the camera will auto adjust based on the enemy that you're fighting, and this is an option that you can customize. So you can customize how quickly it zooms out, and when you interlink, if that zooms out or not, and it's much better. And because in the previous games, again, you would have to change the camera yourself. Like during battle, you'd have to zoom it out if you wanted to see like the entire creature, because in these games you sometimes do fight very large creatures and monsters. So I like that the option was there. That was something I wish the first 2 games had, and I'm definitely happy that they're here. And then another thing I mentioned briefly was the side content. Here's the thing. I don't think I remember talking about side content too much in Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, my videos on those. Let me just say that the side content in Xenoblade 1, I like it, but it's very simple side stuff. Like, it's basically just fetch quests or like go kill X amount of monsters or whatever it is. It's very basic, but I don't know, it kind of had a fun loop to it if you just turn the game down, listen to some videos, and just grind it out side missions. Like, it was kind of fun. I did not take part in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 side missions that much. I'm sorry guys, I personally just did not want to spend any more time in that game than I had to, so I was not a fan of that. But the side content in Xenoblade 3 with this game is impressive. I compared it to Red Dead Redemption 2, and maybe that's a little bit too big of praise, but I was impressed at how quality the side content was. So some of it felt like it was actually part of the story. Like there would be actual good cutscenes with different battle animations and stuff made for them, and I was like, wait a minute, this is literally something I could have missed. So that's really cool. I do like that quite a bit. The side content in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is definitely the best in the series as far as just how quality it is. I ended up doing a good amount of it. I didn't do all of it, but I tried to do as much as I wanted to and I could, and that was a lot of this stuff early on that I found. So yeah, side content is very, very good. So now let's talk about the story. This is where I have a lot more to say, and this is the thing that interests me more personally when it comes to these games. The first thing I have to say is the tone is finally back. It was such a good feeling when I started Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and the tone was way more dramatic and kind of gritty. It reminded me of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 in a lot of ways. It was perfect. It was so good. That opening cutscene was extremely strong, and even when I think back to it, I'm like, man, that was a great opening. It just makes a way better first impression than Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did. So I was very hyped. The game started, cutscene played. I was extremely hyped to see where the story went from here. And the story setup where we learn about there's these 2 fighting nations basically of Kevis and Agnes, and that was kind of that was cool. That was something that you saw in the trailers a lot. But then you also find out that every single character has only 10 years to live, so they have a 10-year lifespan. And I was like, man, that's so smart. That just seems like that has so many possibilities for writing and what you could do with that. So I was in, like I was 100% on board with everything this story was setting up. And the characters are really good. Way better than the characters in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 were. And they had some really good moments. Like thinking back over the story after finishing it, I can think of like a good few moments between each of the characters. You know, you get most of your party pretty much at the start, minus just some heroes that you can, that's what they call them. It's like extra party members you can swap in and out. But you get most of the main bulk of your crew right at the beginning. And that gives them time to have, you know, cool little cutscenes and moments here and there. And I thought it was really good. I really thought this was the best portrayal of like, you know, your party in any of the Xenoblade Chronicles games. Now, I personally have a soft spot for the original Xenoblade Chronicles and its cast, so I would say that's my favorite group of characters. But there's no denying, I think Xenoblade Chronicles 3 probably has better characters overall and better character moments as well. So in that sense, it did impress me. And as far as these character interactions, I must say that Noah and Mio are like the two basically main characters of this game. Their relationship is really sweet, and I definitely enjoyed watching them. They had probably the best moments in the story together at like multiple different points in it. So they were probably the best. Like they were really, really great and amazing. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching them interact on screen. This is where I need to be honest with you guys. I know I've talked a lot of positives so far about like the setup, the story, the characters, you know, the direction it was going. But I was disappointed in the game's story when all was said and done. And again, please remember, yes, I know this game is good. It really is a good game, and I do recommend it. And again, it is probably the best Xenoblade Chronicles game. But I was disappointed by the end of it. And I'm going to explain all of that and more. But I have to give a spoiler warning, as I'm probably going to get into a bit more specifics, you know, beyond this point in the video. So this is your warning. If you've never played this game before and you want to play it for yourself, and you want to go in as blind as possible, now's probably a time to click off and come back after. So I think my disappointment mainly comes down to the setup for this story being S tier, like so amazingly good, and the fact that it just, to me, I felt like it didn't come together the way that I was hoping it did by the end. It ended up not really doing enough with its concepts as I was hoping for and I was really expecting, because it seemed so grand and awesome and amazing. And this game really had to do that because, you know, we're no longer on top of like the Mechonis or the Bionis or these Leviathans, and two, you know, we have to do something new to make the story feel grand and massive. And I was like so on board with their decisions, but it just didn't come together. And I think there's one moment in the story that really sums up my thoughts on this. It really brings out my opinions. And that is when Mio dies in the story. For me, that was the moment right after that. That was amazing. And there was a lot of build up to that moment. So I'm not saying that was bad. I expected that, and it made sense. Like that was where the story was going because Mio was the oldest of the group. However, after her supposed death, where she basically doesn't die, which, you know, that's fine, nothing against it, I guess. But after that whole cutscene, which was masterfully done, I basically just clocked out. Like I was kind of done with the story because I felt like that was what we were building to. And once we got there, I was like, all right, what's left? Like, yeah, we have to, like, you know, kill the bad guy. So interesting. I did not like Z. We're going to talk about that in a second. But yeah, for me, when it comes to stories, especially a story like this, the story had two big things going at the beginning. That's what I already talked about a second ago. I mentioned it a minute ago. And that is, you know, Kevis and Agnes, so this war between, you know, two nations, and then the 10-year lifespan. Those are two big concepts that were set up and need some kind of payoff. Like, where's this going? And the 10-year lifespan was everything to do with Mio and her being afraid of dying, and just like those real excellent cutscenes with her. And I was like, dude, sweet, like, let's go. Once we got there, there was not enough setup with the villain and how he played into all of this for me to really care. Like, we never really see him do anything. Like, yeah, the consoles suck, and yeah, they're doing all this other, you know, bad stuff, and I get that. Like, you wanted to beat him up. With Z himself, it just didn't connect with me. I didn't understand, like, all right, why though? Like, you know, I didn't really feel it was as strong as maybe some of the other storylines in Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and maybe even 2 for that matter, because I feel like even something like 2, as much as I did not like its story and I thought it was a huge mistake in a lot of ways, I feel like it set up things and paid off at least better. Even if the tone in the beginning kind of ruined it for me personally, I at least see what they were going for. I kind of fell out, and Z did not really work for me personally. So I was kind of just, you know, I was gonna finish it, but I wasn't really into it like I was through the first portion up until Mio's death. I don't know, like maybe the fact that Mio doesn't technically die, maybe that was kind of a mistake. I don't really know. Like I just feel like everything that happened right after that long cutscene, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm good. You know, I'm good. Like it's not doing what I was like. It's not getting somewhere. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's kind of a hot take. Why don't we digress on that and let's talk a little bit more about the ending itself. Okay, so the actual ending. So after you beat Z, it was beautiful. It was sad. But what is happening and why? I was so confused. Okay, so I don't know, maybe this is just me and I'm an idiot and Xenoblade Chronicles is just not a series for me. The ending, it was done amazingly. Like I was like, man, like the music kicked in, there's like, you know, the characters were like running for each other and all that stuff, but I kind of just was done by that point. And the reason why is because I felt like it came out of nowhere. Like the game never explained to me, and I was paying attention, and I don't think they explained properly why their worlds needed to separate. Not to mention, I didn't even mention this, but it seemed like they retconned the ending of Xenoblade 2, where like the worlds collided, you know, they joined the Xenoblade Chronicles 1 world. Like that's what I interpreted that ending being. It seemed like they just retconned it and they did something else instead with 3. That was weird, but then at the end for it to be like, all right, now we gotta like separate. It just felt like it came out of nowhere. It's like, all right, the story was Kevis and Agnes. It's like, you know, these 2 nations, a 10-year lifespan, you know, we got somewhat of a payoff on that, but then like, all right, why are we separating worlds? I did not understand why we needed to. I'm totally open to the fact that maybe part of understanding this story you might really need to have like the Japanese context in mind, because I feel like there were certain little details sprinkled in the story that I really felt like were very Japanese inspired, just like their nation, and you know, that context I think really matters. I know a little bit about that just from the Persona series and watching videos around that, and I feel like maybe that's something there with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And I've not watched any videos on this game since beating it, so I'm coming in here with just my own dumb opinions from my own dumb brain about this game. But maybe y'all have to let me know in the comments on this one when it comes to the ending. I was just confused overall by the end of it. I didn't understand why it needed to happen. It was excellently done though. I know I've thrown out a lot of ideas. I've probably rambled a little bit in this video, but to kind of sum everything up, just my final thoughts. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the best Xenoblade Chronicles game, and I do like it. I don't hate this game. I don't dislike it as much as I do the second game. However, I don't see myself replaying it anytime soon or being as connected to it as I was with the first game. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 for me is just like, it's one of those all-time Nintendo classics, you know? Like, if you have a Switch and you any amount remotely like JRPGs, just play Xenoblade Chronicles 1. Play it on the easy mode if you need to. I personally do recommend doing it that way just because the side content isn't amazing to me. But yeah, just play it. Just play it. I think it's worth it, and it's an amazing game. Overall, you know, I'm a little, maybe I sound a little cynical, but I think the best part of this series was that original game, and I have a soft spot for it. With Xenoblade Chronicles 3, the combat was really well done. The story had some really amazing and great moments in it. It just didn't pay off the way I quite wanted it to. So that's sort of my opinions on this game. I try to keep it as brief as possible, you know, just like here's my overall perspective on the story after stepping away from it for a few days after I finished it. You all have to let me know what you all think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please hit that like button. If you didn't, I thank you for watching this long. Don't forget to engage that subscribe button down below. And with all that being said, thank you all for watching this video and being here and coming along with me on this journey through the Xenoblade Chronicles series. I will digress for now, and I'll see you all in the next video. God bless.
I wish I knew